Welcome back. Today we are going to work on some old school flies. I'm kind of having a moral dilemma with the amount of mylar that's come into the world, and I'm going to do a talk about it later, not today. But I kind of feel like people would really benefit from going back a little bit old school and just trying some new techniques, because you get kind of pigeonholed in techniques, and it's really fun. I think it makes you a better tyer all around if you know how to do more than just one or two styles, and it definitely makes it more interesting. When I grew up in the back, in the 60s, when I started, there was the dry fly scene wasn't really there, the streamer scene. It was mostly all wet flies. And it's really, to me, that's where I learned to tie and how I learned to fish, with swinging wet flies. And we kind of lost our ways. I was talking to Braden about it a few minutes ago, that I would probably put a good amount of money that you can't find a traditional wet fly in almost any fly shop left in the country, mine included. We hardly have any. And they still fish really well, and they're really fun to tie. And so I want to go over a couple things about it, just because if you do this already, you'll know, but this book here is just the Trout is one of my favorite books in history. It is my favorite Trout book. But there's, not even a dozen flies, dozen or so. And if you go back in time, there really weren't that many, and they're not very complicated. They were very simple. You can see there's just not much to it. One thing that I did, I don't know, it was my dad's influence or what, but there was only one female wet fly that's an egg sac wet fly, and that was a lady beaverkill. I can't find one, and I don't recall one, but my dad always told me that I should do all my wet flies both ways, and I did. And it's just a fun change. And I just want to show you those there. There's very little difference, and I'm going to do three of these different videos. I'm going to do a basic Hare's there, kind of with a little flair to it. But then you've got, your March Browns and your Quills and your Cahills and your female beaverkill and stuff like that. And I'm just going to go through and show you this picture right here in this book. And there's three flies in here in particular, which really turned me around. That's how this Granny Grandstorms was his tyer's name. It was a nickname for a guy, and he was, I think, from Oregon, and his pictures are in here. He was, in my way, for me, influential-wise, never knowing, I didn't even know it was a person. I looked him up about 2 years ago, and his style was the cleanest style I've ever seen in my life. And so what I did was I kind of favored his stuff, and I went on with it. But all these styles, all wet flies, I don't care which one it is, they're very simple. There's just tail, body. Almost, other than the gold-ribbed Hares there, almost none of the wet flies had ribbing on them. I'm going to put a rib on just for fun, because I'm going to dress this up just a little bit to make it interesting. But basically, we're going to go through the style. And I would encourage you, it'll make you a better tyer, for sure, because you'll use more techniques, but they're all real simple. There's nothing complicated. And I would encourage you to look at a couple videos. Davey Watton, one of the greatest tyers in history, has some great videos out there. I know Fly Fish TV has his videos online now. Incredible tyer. David McField does a lot of this stuff on his, and they're just incredible tyers. And a lot of history, because this is where fly fishing started. It didn't start with dry flies, and it didn't start with stream, it started with wet flies. And now there's a lot of influence with the trout spay group. And so you got flies like this that are, I just tied this for my buddy Todd, because he's home whining with his new knee. He got a knee replacement. But at any rate, a lot of trout spay, right? And so you see, and a lot of people call that wet fly. It's not truly a wet fly. Wet flies, you'll see, they're just a smaller version. So the beauty of this thing is you can use almost anything to tie one. You do not have to have any advanced materials. You don't have to have a super quality dry fly neck, probably. The worse your neck is, the better your fly will be anyway. And so what I'm going to do, normally I would tie with either hare's mask. I did a lot of those. I'm going to do a fox squirrel today, but it doesn't matter. Most of mine were done with either mink or muskrat in the old days, and because it was readily available to me, right? And so I'm gonna just use that. I'm gonna use a heavy hitter. I'm gonna use a heavy hitter, heavyweight bronze. This hook right here is it's the closest thing to traditional that I would say that I tied on when I was doing mustads. I'm going to use just a regular, just a Hungarian partridge. If you want to, again, you want to sub out, you want to use a regular rough grouse, a blue grouse, a hen, sage hen, I don't care. That's what's so fun about this. You can use a lot of stuff. The beauty of the Hungarians is that they come dyed and there's all these colors of them. It's kind of fun. You can see this one's pretty well history. I use a lot of olive. But then we're going to use mallard wings. We're going to have a match set. People are afraid to tie these. It's not hard to tie them in. And it's really fun to learn to do it, and you'll screw up a few, but it's not a hard thing to do. And some of the ones I'm going to do later, you'll see they don't even have wings. Matter of fact, most of the ones that I tied when I was a kid either had hen hackle tips, or it was just a clump. They would clump up. Usually it was mallard flank, and it was dyed or just straight up. These are traditional. I just like it. It looks pretty. I'm going to use Semperfli 18-aught black, nano silk, and I'm going to use some extra small gold tinsel. So if you look at this fly, the last thing, this one's in the vise here already. And what I was saying about the female, I'm going to put this Adams right here. It's got a little egg sac. And the female was always a version in a lot of the flies in the old days, in the traditional flies. There was frequently a female and a male. And like I said, I think it was my dad. I have no idea why I would put egg sacs, just that little yellow dot on the back of a lot of my wet flies. And I never ribbed my wet flies because no one else did either. And this one in the middle, that's and you can see how it's just kind of gross looking, right? It's just dull. It's not much to it. And I just flipped that one together just so you could see an egg sac on one. It was just kind of fun. Like I said, I put egg sacs on a lot of mine, but that's not really that critical. I think it might draw a little attention because they're so drab anyway, right? But I want you to see, I'm just going to do this. I've done it on a lot of them because I love to style up a fly and just make it a little bit more complicated. And one thing I want to mention about this, and I'll do it again, I'm sure, when I get to the hackle, when I was taught to do these things, the hackle went on and then the wing. I didn't like that look. I liked putting the hackle over top of the wings because in my way of thinking, the legs are kind of all over crazy, going all over the place. And if they're just down against the body, it didn't look right to me. The little collar I'm going to put on that's just from a casual dress. It's just something I like to do. It just dresses them up a little bit. So I'm going to do it on a size 10, mostly because I haven't tied enough of these lately I don't want to go down. I seldom, by the way, on a wet fly, when I started tying and fishing when I was really young, wet flies were much bigger. And I mean like down to like, probably what would be the equivalent of a 6, maybe an inch long. They were pretty big, and a lot of different ones were like that. And so a 10 and a 12 were pretty much a constant for almost all your wet flies. That's still the size I fish today. I have no problem going out during a spinner fall of a fly that's size 16 or 18 and throwing on a size 14 or 12 and matching it, and they eat it. It's great. It's kind of easy. So the tail and the hackle are going to be the same thing. I'm using a 10, so I'm going to pull this hackle out. I love to get some color in here, and I usually can get both my leg and my legs and my hackle and my tail out of the same feather. So I'm going to start this. I've already waxed my thread just a little bit, and I had that sample here somewhere. This guy, you can see I'm going to have a little bit more up front than, I'm just going to have a little bit more space needed because I'm going to put that collar on. So I'm going to leave a little bit extra space right here when I start this. And again, you'll get used to that. You'll figure out what you like the looks of, and so you don't rush the head. I harp on this constantly. If you're going to make a mistake, it's almost always going to be right at the front of the hook, and you're going to run out of space. So we're going to come back here with nice even wraps. Here's the feather that I just pulled off. And you can see, and I like to prep my feathers. I know a lot of people don't do that, but I'm going to tie this in. I like to use the stem as my hackle plier. And when I do this, I'm going to pull this back here, and I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to wrap this as hackle, right? But I'm going to use this really wispy stuff on the edge here for my tail. So I pull that off, and I've got, 5, 6, and I like it to be the length of the body, not the length of the over. A lot of times, like on my dries, I like to over length my tails. I like them to be a little bit more. This one, I'm going to just do the length of the hook and set it, kind of look at it, and I like it to be all over the place. When it gets wet, it's all going to be gobbed up as one anyway, but I just like to do that. And then I start making my body. And I wrap forward, and I like tapers. And I talk about that constantly. Everything's a taper in this stuff. And so I'm going to wrap forward and get my ribbing. And I'm going to tie this, I'm going to tie my ribbing in kind of, I always use a little bit more than I need. And I'm going to come up to just about the 2/3 mark, and I catch this on the outside, let it roll over, draw it in, and I've just built a little tiny bit of taper as I went forward, right? And I say this in every video, use the hook as your gauge. If you want it in a specific spot, I like my thread to end at the barb where it starts to go up. That's just what I like. If you don't like that, but make sure it's consistent. That's the hallmark to great tires, is if everything's always the same. And so I'm going to use my hair rake. I did a video on this forever ago. I absolutely love this thing. I've got 2 pine squirrels here. If you want to blend these, that's great. I'm going to go with kind of a traditional grayish looking body. If you look back, and like I was showing in the book, if you look back, there's very little color in wet flies. And as far as the traditional, a lot of wet flies traditionally, like a Wickham's Fancy or a Parmesan Belle or something, there was a lot of color in some of those that are kind of attractorish. But when I think about wet flies, more current, say 70s on, they're just drowned insects is what they were. And so they had very little color in their body. And so I picked this one because it looks kind of like looks a little bit like muskrat. You can see how fast that thing works. And it's got the dubbing and the guard hairs in it at the same time. And so basically, when I put this into my dubbing loop, it's that fast. It's just that quick for me. And I can rat that out a little bit if I want it to be rougher, but you won't have to. Or I can, kind of trim it up a little bit. And I'm going to stop that so I have room for, you can see I've got room for I'm going to finish here. I'll set my wing, I'll put my hackle, and then I still have to be able to put that collar on. And again, if you don't want to do that collar, great. Don't. It's not on any wet fly in the world. It's just something I did for my own. When I was a kid tying, when I first started with this stuff, when I first started, I had fly shops and stuff, you're always trying to kind of get a signature on your flies. And so like on my nymphs, I always did the burgundy thread. And on some of my wets, I would put this little fancy collar on there. just because it looks fun. So you can see how long that took. Don't wax your thread when you do this. Just let it float around in here and just nice and tight. You spin this up, and then what I don't like a lot of picky at the back side. The only place I want it's up front. And so I'll just go through here, but you'll see how easy this is to get a really clean body without, I'm not messing with it too much. And I can see it as I go. You can see it's nice and picky, and it's just a clean little body, not a lot to it. You're gonna rib it, so you're gonna get a little bit more spikiness. And by the way, that is not how a traditional wet is done. I very seldom saw people make a webby body on their wet flies. It was generally just a dubbed body. I just like the looks of it. If you want to wrap it, that's fine. And then I'm going to go for 4 or 5 turns because this is a 10. And again, right now, if you wanted to, you could, if you didn't like the looks of your body, if it's too picky for you, whatever it is, if it's too picky, right now you could come in and pull it out. You can do whatever. I like that look. It's just, it's whatever you like. I like the look of that being very picky. And this one's not too bad, but if I wanted it less, you can pull it out. I'm not real big on trimming my bodies when they're here. So, and if you feel like you should be further forward or whatever, you can always come in. I did a seminar a month ago or so, and we were talking about this. I said, there's no sin to coming in here and just adding this. The person I was working with, I'll show you, it doesn't need it. But I said, just build it up right there. You're fine. Because he said he always gets to the point with it, we were doing a wet fly. He always gets up there and it looks too short. I said, well, just add a little dubbing. It didn't need it. It was fine right there. So now we're going to go into the part that scares people. We're going to work with this match set of mallard wings. As a kid, that was a real problem for me because I didn't realize they're supposed to be matched. I don't know how that slipped me, but I would frequently just grab one. And I want to show you something about these wings. So here, now you can see this is a match set, and I've been working on this. These are short, and I didn't talk about that, and I will more on the wings. There's, generally speaking, most of what you see are mallard. But there's no sin in going over to this rough grouse or any other fly. If you watch McPhail, he's often talking about woodcock. Well, he's talking about grouse. And so, like on a March Brown, for example, it's got a mottled brown wing. And most of my wet flies that were not in Adam's phase, I used that brown wing because I thought it looked nice. And that's all this is about, making it look nice. But the wing itself, I like to take on these primaries, this is your flight, right? You can see they're matched because I've got 3 left on each side, right? So you can see that I've pulled those out and they're a match set. When they get down and they get kind of thick at the end, like you can see these, and they get a little stiff, I do not like tying with those. Some people do. I mean, to me, they just don't lay down quite like I like them to. And so once I get up into that, I use about 1/3 to 1/2 in the middle of the feather, then I just kind of discard, right? And I kept those so you could see them. And these lay a little easier. They marry together easier when they're like this. When they're in the middle, you can see it's nice and soft. And so what I do is I simply cut a kind of the same length always as I go forward. So if this is a size 10 wing, I just keep going forward. You can see how I notch that. And so that one I did a little bit, this one has a little bit more out of it than that one does. When I look at it, I just pull this off. So when I set them up here in my hand to get ready to do that, I simply am going to take a little of this one out. I like them pretty even. The the one thing you'll find out about these things is that the first fish you catch, this wing disappears. It blows up, right? They're going to be nice little, you're going to have this nice little wing that's all set like that, and then you're going to catch a fish and it's just going to go. And there was actually a pretty good amount. At one point, I remember in the 70s or 80s, they did these things called clump wings, where they would just tie these in. They just smash them up to start with. I prefer to let them get broke up. So what I'm doing here is I'm marrying these with their, just against the back so I can see they're the same length, roughly the same length, same width. And I'm just getting them to lay beside themselves. And when I come over here, I'll lay them right on top and I'll just adjust them as I go. And so that if the wing's too big, which this one I think is just a touch big, just look at them and make sure they're kind of close. Get them laid down. Just come right over top and get an idea. If you're Davy McFeel, you just kind of go plunk and they fall right down. I can't do that. So just get a feel for them so they're back to back and fold them over, right? So you can see both the wings. I'm trying to get where you can see it. I kind of messed them up a little bit when I did that. So you can see the length. And then make sure they're beside each other. Come over, do a single pinch wrap, squeeze them with both finger, your thumb and your finger, straight down, and there's your wing. There's nothing more to it. It's just that easy. I was messing around with them, and you got this cute little wing. Everything's beautiful, right? Like I said, first fish, that's going to go away. I like to wax this just a little bit, make sure that's nice and tight, come forward, and so I can get that stuff all gone. Get out of there. There's this guy named Wayne Llewellyn. He's one of the greatest tyers in the world. And Wayne's a very good friend of mine. And mentor, if you will. And Wayne said, you really have to get some pointier scissors. He hates these big scissors. I like them. I'm used to them. So back to where we were. So there's our wing. What I do with my hackle. Uh-oh, she blew out of here. All right, I'll grab another one here. So I blew my feather away there somewhere. So when I showed it before, I cut this. I cut it pretty close to the stem right there so I can get a clean tie-in. When I was tying that in, I nicked with a little cut in my finger. I want you to see that. I frayed that thread. I'm just going to, before I was getting ready to tie in my hackle, and I don't want to have this, I don't want to get halfway through this and have that thread break. So I'm just going to come right back over top of that like this, get rid of it before it undoes, give it a hit of wax. I'm getting a little, you can see how frayed up that was. That was just, I hit that little nick in my finger and it frayed that thread. So back to this hackle. I'm going to put another hackle in because I already cut that one, and when I nicked that thread, I just didn't. It's amazing. You cannot break GSP thread. It's almost impossible to break it, but you can nick that on some of the most, that is barely noticeable on my finger. Little wax, come back in here. Just hook that. Sorry if I'm blocking the camera there. And I'm going to just kind of, you'll see, I just kind of fold this back. It's hard for me to not block the camera, but I'm just folding it back. Just come over and just try not to spin the hackle, the stem. Try to keep it going right forward. You can see I'm folding it back as I go. I don't like to see it marry really tight back. Like, I don't want it to be so tight that it's like a folded feather. I like it to be what it is right now. Absolutely batshit crazy hackle everywhere. I want it going, see how that's just everywhere right now? get 2 good turns, you can pop that. Now we're just gonna lay this back a little bit. I got a little bit of buildup right there. I don't like that, and I don't like that. Okay, now, I'm a little bit forward, but I'll be able to get that in a second. And now I'm gonna do, and again, we could finish this fly right now, right? We could be completely done with it. I'm going back and I'm putting this collar on just because I like to do it. And this is kind of what I was ranting about earlier, is that I hate to see us lose all tradition. And this isn't a tradition. This is a technique that I enjoy, and I think it's dressy. I think it makes the fly look sexy, and it's for me, right? I don't like to production tie. When you first start tying, people want to fill boxes. When I like to make my flies look good. I tie 3 flies usually, 3. 6 is a forever for me. But usually I do 3, and that's when I dress them really nice, and when they're gone, I do it again. So when I take this for this collar, you can see I'm way up at the front of this fox squirrel, or this pine squirrel. And I'm gonna come in here and I'm going to cut, not much. I'm gonna do 1 turn with this. So I want you to see how little's in here. And then I switch it over and I cut it in advance pretty short. Again, I'm going to want, maybe, if I get 2 turns, that'd be amazing. So I'm gonna open this up. I don't want wax on here. I want it just to go in and be able to move freely. And just, you can adjust this with your finger just like that. See how I'm barely touching that? And it's gonna be, now there's plenty in there to catch, and then I'm just gonna get it started and just spin it really fast, right? Really tight. If this is a dress, if you didn't want to put that on there, you don't have to. Now we're gonna wet your fingers slightly and just go around it, keeping it folding back, just like that. No, there's nothing to it. 2 turns. It's just a fun little, it doesn't mean anything to the fishability of this fly. Well, maybe it does. I don't know. Can't tell you. I've just done it forever. And so clean up here. This is 18-aught thread. So you're gonna have not much build, right? I like a 3-turn, 4 max, 2, 3, 4 and a finish. And then come in here. I see that right there, that strand, that little wispy thing? That was from nicking my finger again. So that is this is just kind of a regular traditional wet fly with a little flare with that front in there. You know, you glue your head now. But you can see the wing is just I like it to hang back. Again, I don't think I mentioned it. I like my wings to hang back just about to the bend of the hook. It's just where I think you're thinking about a dead fly, right? It's a wounded in action. It's floating around in there. Maybe it's got some kick. The legs are on the outside. But again, it's just a fun little fly. It's not a fly that's complicated. You don't have to have any, advanced materials or anything like that. It'll help you stick with tradition. You'll learn some new techniques. It'll make you a better tyer for sure. And they're really fun to fish. Hope you liked it. Hope it helps you out.